Hi everyone, I'm Clifford today, and you're not. Welcome to another edition of IMO, where I give my opinion on stuff. Today we are joined by Zenyatta Mandata by The Police and all your favorite bands by Dawes. Guys, I know I talk a lot about Christian music and stuff, but we gotta talk about Christians in video games. Christians have always tried to dabble in the different mediums of media entertainment, and they've been at least a little successful in two of them. I believe that Christians have actually nailed it in music. Of course, there is a lot to complain about in popular Christian music today, but at least there are a ton of underground or independent Christian artists that have made a ton of unique and creative music, and there's a lot of great music from many artists from around the 70s on into the 90s. A little bit less so for Christians in movies and TV. I'd say about 80 to 90% of the time, Christians aren't great at movies and TV. But at least we do have a few gems that we can enjoy, even though the good ones don't always get that much attention. And at least there are a few movies that maybe aren't necessarily made by Christians or a Christian distributor, but they at least have some Christian themes in them, and both secular and Christian audiences can enjoy them. Hardly any of these qualities have ever been found in video games when Christians make them. And you'd be surprised as to how many attempts have been made, mostly in PC games. Aside from a few VeggieTales games that I kinda enjoyed as a kid, and a PC game called Catechumen, which I guess was pretty decent for a game from the year 2000, there hasn't been any other games that have come close to being quality entertainment. There was a dumb Left Behind PC strategy game. There was the infamous Super 3D Noah's Ark for the NES, along with a bunch of other games developed by Wisdom Tree. Just a bunch of other dumb kids' Bible games and Bible trivia games. There was a dance praise game and a guitar praise game. Just a bunch of randomness, but nothing has ever stood out other than the few that I mentioned earlier. And now we have this I Am Jesus Christ game that's coming on Steam, and I just don't get it. Like, is it a joke? I hope that it's a joke, but if it's not, that's really sad because this game does not make sense. Like, why would you have your game be that you're playing as literally Jesus Christ? I mean, like, what happens if you lose a challenge or whatever? Like, what happens if they ask you to, like, raise a girl back to life from the dead and you fail the challenge? I mean, is Jesus supposed to be like, whoops, sorry, I guess your girl's still dead? It just doesn't make any sense to me. All this to say, this is a step in the wrong direction. I mean, I guess the graphics aren't terrible. I mean, they're better than anything we've done before, but it's still not up to par with the games that are coming out these days. Although I understand that it is an independent game. Here's the thing. I think we could do a lot better than this. It's honestly kind of surprising as to how long the video game industry has existed, decades actually. We've hardly had anything to show for it. I feel like that there's a lot of untouched potential. But at the same time, I do understand why we haven't had any success. Because guys, making video games is hard. I honestly think it's probably the hardest medium of entertainment in which to make a good and successful project.
Because these days, with prices of decent quality studio equipment being so accessible, anyone and their mother could make a decent record. I mean, my band did it. And even decent cameras are easier to get a hold of. Get a bunch of your friends together and boom, you got an independent film. But with video games, you gotta get a team of talented video game designers, animators, artists, actors, music composers. You gotta get a whole A-team together. And even that doesn't always mean your game's gonna come out right. And on top of that, here's one thing that you need to know about the video game industry, is that the gaming community is super critical. In the age of the internet, nothing gets past a bunch of highly critical gamers. The story has to be good. The gameplay has to be good. Every aspect of the game has to be good. Mess one thing up, and you're never going to hear the end of it. Take this game, for instance. By the looks of this trailer, you could say this game looks pretty competent. The graphics look decent, looks pretty cinematic, looks like it could be fun. Must have been a pretty successful game, right? Wrong. People hated this game, and it became one of the worst rated games of the year. It might have looked cool, but they obviously didn't get everything right. And what was that? I don't know, I didn't play it.
So this is what we're up against. I mean, the gaming industry has become this well-oiled machine that has taken decades to build up, and we're dangling behind. Gaming giants like Rockstar, From Software, and Nintendo have been making masterpieces lately, and how are we supposed to compete with that? I mean, look at this. How are we supposed to compete with that? How are we supposed to get to this level?
But here's the real reason why I've made this video. I want to offer some hope. A little earlier I mentioned that I believe there's a lot of untapped potential for Christians in the video game industry, and I believe that's true. However, I'm not saying that we need to conquer the gaming industry so that we can preach the gospel to all those sinning gamers. I mean, yes, giving a message is cool, and if lives are changed because of that, that's cool, that's fine. I just have a feeling that there may be some Christian video game designers or developers that want to tell a story that is important to their faith in order to show God's glory through their talents. Fear not, you Christian video game designers and developers. I may have some ideas that you might like. One thing I think we need to shy away from is coming off as being too preachy. I mean, if we really want to appeal to both Christian and secular audiences, we need to make sure that we don't alienate anyone by wearing an agenda on our sleeves. A lot of Christian films make the mistake of doing that and end up only preaching to the choir. However, there are plenty of films that are marketed to all audiences but have a good Christian message woven throughout. A couple of examples I can give are the films Silence and The Book of Eli. Silence is a film directed by the legendary Martin Scorsese, and it's focused on two missionaries who are sent to a country where Christianity is not allowed. On the surface, it is a well-made film about survival and rescue, but under the surface, the character struggles with their faith is the most prevalent theme throughout the film. The Book of Eli is a post-apocalyptic, heavily violent action film. However, the main plot of the film is that Denzel Washington's character has the only copy of the Bible in the country, and he's trying to get it into safe hands. Evil men are trying to get a hold of Eli and the Bible so they can use it for the selfish gain of power.
So two films that are targeted to all audiences, and yet they both tackle subjects of religion and faith that can make anyone think, honestly. My point is, why don't we have any games like that? There are dozens and dozens of games that are emotionally impactful and really make you think about the things of life. And yet, I've never seen a game that even comes close to talking about things of religion and faith. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm missing out.
But why can't we have a game that has a protagonist who's maybe struggling with the faith that he was brought up with in the past, and he's dealing with the concept of forgiveness on a path to revenge? Or why can't we have a game similar to Book of Eli, where religion is a thing of the past and our character is one of the last defenders of the faith and needs to survive people who are out to get them? I'm sorry to keep comparing to films, but consider Kingdom of Heaven. not a perfect film, but it's action-packed with battles and violence, all the while addressing the religious struggles at the time. I think the Crusades, while problematic in many ways, could be a perfect setting for creating a story for a soldier who is fighting in the Crusades, but all the while he's struggling with what it really means to be a Christian and whether if what they are doing is right in causing all of this senseless violence. He could have a change of heart and avoid being killed by his angry crusading brothers, while also avoiding being killed by Muslims. I don't know, it could go anywhere you want. We could also go to the obvious source, the Bible. So many possibilities could be picked from that. Plenty of spots in the Old Testament where there are wars and battles. You could be in Joshua's army in the conquest of Canaan and create this whole side story of this fictional character witnessing these events. You could fight in all the battles, all the while creating an interesting story. I think the story of King David also offers up a lot of opportunity for a game, well, with all the battles, wars, and drama that was in his life. And if you're gonna make a game about Jesus, why not have it be that the protagonist isn't literally the Son of God? I mean, sure, you could play as a disciple or something, but if you wanted to keep things interesting, why not go in a more Ben-Hur type route and play as a fictional character who comes across Jesus' ministry and is changed forever? During this time, there were a lot of fights between the Romans and Jewish zealots who stood against the Roman government and believed that violence was the way to bring salvation to the Israelites. You could play as this Jewish zealot and even fight in a few battles and skirmishes, but then sometime later in the game, he encounters Jesus and his teachings, and he's like, I don't want to fight anymore, and he decides to follow Jesus, but that causes problems with his zealot friends. And the story just goes from there. The thriller genre could also be a neat route to go. And as Frank Peretti and Ted Decker have shown, Christians can be pretty good at writing psychological, supernatural type thriller stories, because there is a big market for those kinds of games, as there have been some pretty successful titles in the genre.
So either write a good story or find a good book that could translate well into a video game. I mean, come to think of it, there are plenty of Christian books in many different genres that could do well as a video game. I mean, there are plenty of Christian fantasy books that could do well as their own action-adventure game.
Now, I know I was talking a lot earlier about how the video game industry demands that your game looks good and plays well, but there actually is an alternative route to go, especially if you have a limited budget and a smaller team of people, and that route is the independent route, which has been booming for the past decade. Thanks to the internet and companies like Steam, it's become easier for independent video game creators to release their games to the world. Of course, this is not an excuse for your game to look crappy, even though there are a lot of those out there. But if you get creative with the resources that you have, you can make a compelling game using the simplest graphics and not have to have your graphics look as good as Red Dead Redemption 2. One good example I'll give is a game called Doki Doki Literature Club. This indie game literally used the most simplest of animation and graphics, using hardly any animation at all. At first, you think it's some weird anime dating simulator / visual storybook, but as you continue with the story, it becomes this super creative and yet dark and twisted game that I literally don't know any game like it.
What the
All this to say, and I'm repeating myself, but if you are creative with the resources that you have, you can still make a compelling game with a compelling story. The moral of the story is, guys, we can do better. Again, I'm not saying this because I think that the gaming industry is this great missionary field that we need to conquer. But Josh Keith has this great video on Christian music, and basically what he says and what I try to keep telling you guys is that if our God is the creator of the universe, shouldn't our endeavors try to reflect that creativity? And if there are Christian video game developers out there, shouldn't our endeavors look just a little bit better than this? That's basically all I got for this. I hope that you liked it. I know it's a little different than what I usually do, but I still want to focus on Christian music stuff, but every once in a while I'd like to branch out into different areas of the Christian entertainment industry, and I just felt like that this was something that no one really talks about, so I just felt that it was important enough to make a whole video about it. So I'm sorry. But right now we're getting into the recommendation slot of the video, and boy, I'm just throwing a whole bunch of new things at you because this isn't really a music recommendation, but it is music related. So my recommendation for today is No Compromise, which is the life story of Keith Green by Melody Green. This is the biography of one of the biggest pioneers in the early days of Christian music. It covers exactly how Keith Green became a Christian musician and follows how his ministry just made a huge impact in the 70s. When I read this years ago, it honestly really inspired me in my own faith. And even if you don't know his music, it still is an incredible story about someone who was against commercial Christianity and had very strong convictions in his own faith. So I highly recommend you guys check that out if you like reading books and if you like reading biographies. That is definitely the book for you. You can check out the link that I have in my description if you are interested in purchasing it. Again, you're not paying extra for it at all by using this link. You're paying the same price that you usually would. I just happen to get a percentage of it if you want to support me in the channel. Anyways, I'm kind of bored right now. Do you want to do something? You want to, I don't know, you just want to chill, talk about something? Oh, you got to go. Okay. That's fine. You guys have a great day. Bye. Love you. Bye. Whoa, hey, that sure was a lot of fun. I sure learned a lot today. Did you? Well, hey, if you want to learn more, be sure to check out these links that are going to appear on the screen right now. So go check those out. Go check out the Podword Forecast podcast. Go check out my other videos. And be sure to subscribe so that you can become Clifford today too. Bye.